copies of that, I suppose. But your slander is more difficult because it can sometimes turn into he said, she said sort of situation. What are the natures of these libelous allegations? Are they perversion, racial? Give me an idea.
Let's see. Well, okay, in a death threat that I got last year, that was written through Facebook. That's actually a criminal matter. But the slander is, or the libelous part of it was like, you're a slave to homosexual love, and that was because I'm an American, and they had the LGBT stuff out here with the EU and USA. I'm in a foreign country at the moment, but there's been times where it's just like that type of libel, like where it's written.
Okay, yeah, that gives me an idea of the flavor. Just outrageous crap.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're right. The death threats, you have to treat those and turn them over to authorities. Are any of these people actually known to you, or are they just trolls with hidden identities?
Neo-Nazi alt-right extreme group here in the country I'm in at the moment, and I did turn in the report to the police. Typically I should have got a copy of the report within 10 days. I didn't, and I never got a court hearing. It's been 14 months. Made the U.S. Embassy aware of it, contact them. They said they claim they can't get the report, which has caused me to refuse to participate any further in journalism. I did journalism on military topics and part of an American Georgian defense related topic for 5 years previous to this last 2 years. But anyway, nothing ever happened. It just 8 visits there, and they just wouldn't come up with it. And so, but back home, it's happened before. Like on a cousin that died, they said some off the wall stuff, and I don't know why or what it had to do with. I'm just the guy that got the job of arranging the funeral because my mother was the closest of kin that was responsible in terms of getting things done, and she was running a nursing home. So I got all that together and was called some names then, and that was this stuff that happens on public, if it's in Facebook or if it's private in chat. I wanted to know how practical or realistic the steps are to take those like screenshots or whatever. I guess the first step is to go to the police with it, but I can't unless it is a death threat, right?
It's got to be a criminal action. Calling someone a slave to whatever it was, whatever. That's not a death threat. That's just an insult.
Sure, and there were the death threats in there. There were 3 identified, but that's an example of also what would be profanity. And I thought, of course, I'm not going to pursue it here, but they're just not going to follow the law. But if I was in the United States and if they had refused to pursue the death threat when it's actually a real written qualified death threat, 3 of them, then I would go after on the civil side just to pull it into court, right? But that's neither here nor there. That's just I'm in a lawless place. That's all.
Well, in Missouri, and I'm not quite sure. Are you in Missouri or are you overseas at the moment?
Right now I'm in overseas, but it's happened also in Missouri, and I just want to know how to go about it wherever I'm at, because it's happened over the years in several different cases.
Well, so. It will vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I have
Sure.
I'm licensed in Missouri and Illinois, but Missouri does not have a favorable climate for libel suits. One of the requirements is to show actual monetary damages, which is nearly impossible. Another issue is that you have to get service on them and somehow to get them before the court. And I imagine most of these are probably out of the state of Missouri. They're from Idaho or somewhere or another. So to find the person and serve them for purposes of getting jurisdiction, you could use a long-arm statute, probably, since it occurred, the libel review occurred in Missouri, but you'd have to find them, serve them, and then you'd have to meet the issue of showing the damages. And again, Missouri, not a good state to sue for libel.
That's good.
So as a practical matter, Your better remedies probably lie with the ones you've been exploring, which is administrative, although you hit a halt on that one. Facebook may be able to respond to some, and of course the criminal stuff you already know. But in short, in Missouri, it's not a good place to sue for libel because of the actual monetary damages requirement. That's the other places, well, I can't opine, but you'd have to stay around long enough to find them, serve them, get jurisdiction, get a judgment, and then you'd have to collect it. I suspect most of these people are not people of any means, and that a judgment would scarcely be worth the paper it was written on. That's my thoughts. Questions?
Well, that's very well explained, because in that situation where, cousin died, she got shot to death, it was sudden, unexpected, so I came back, handled the GoFundMe, and then my mother had already put money in on it, and the people that they were out of state, it looked like most of them that were making the threats had to have a cop show up at the funeral. That was odd, but obviously, and so in that case, I didn't even realize, but yeah, that would have been a no-go, because those people were up in what was it, Wisconsin or something, or Montana, and so that would have been, there you go with the out-of-state thing. In another situation, if it happened when I was in business, or I see that it happens with my mother in business, for example, but those now, I don't see that would be difficult. Though it's a nursing care business, for example, and if they're accused of, let's say, mental abuse or whatever, same type of situation. Somebody dies, they're all cooped up on the chemo and saying things that aren't there and all that kind of stuff. So, but in this other case, they're out of state, and how to prove the monetary damages. So, see, these are things that I didn't know and I didn't realize, but it surely makes sense, because I wasn't even thinking about where they're located. And so,
well, so I'll use a colloquialism that I used to do some hunting with my dad. This dog just won't run.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to close the file out. Sorry for the news. Sometimes you just have to know where you stand. You may receive a customer satisfaction survey. Good numbers are always appreciated. And do you have any final questions before we conclude?
No, I'm very happy. That was very thorough and very practical and down to earth, and I appreciate that approach, and I've got a really good idea of how to handle it if it comes up, and if there's anything to handle maybe. So I appreciate that very much.
My pleasure. Nice talking to you, Mr. Vanderpool. Good evening.
Good evening to you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, shits and bits. Let's see what we got. Shits and bits. Shits and bits.